Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Auvik Roadmap Update of 2019. I'm Sarah Cunningham-Scarf, Auvik's Marketing Communications Specialist. And before I hand it over to our presenter for today, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping things so everyone has an awesome experience during his talk. First of all, if you can't hear, that's not good. So check your computer audio or view your settings. As well, we want this to be an interactive webinar. So if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A and Patrick will answer them throughout the session. There will also be an email contact slide at the end of the webinar in case you have any burning questions you want to reach out to Patrick about. This webinar will be recorded and posted on auvik.com/franklymsp as soon as possible, usually within a day or two, in case you want to circle back on anything he shares today. And lastly, before we get started, I'd like to introduce your host for today. Patrick Albert is our Associate Vice President of Product Management. He's been with Auvik for a year and a half now, about the same time I started, and has been working in the MSP industry since 2005. Okay, now that that's out of the way, Patrick's going to talk to you guys about two things today. First, a summary of what we've rolled up over the past couple of months. We've introduced a ton of incredible features and integrations within the Auvik system, and we want to make sure you know about all of it. Second, he's going to go over the rollout plan, what's going to be pushed out in the short to medium term, so in the next couple months or so. We do these updates about every 6 months, so around October, you'll get another update to take us through the end of 2019 and into early 2020. Okay, that's all for me. Over to you, Pat.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for the intro, Sarah. So as she mentioned, the first bit of this is I want to do a bit of a roll up as to what we have done in the last couple of months. It's been a very successful and very busy year for us at Auvik. So I know there's a lot of announcements, a lot of changes. So I want to go through some of those things and talk about some of the value you can get out of some of them. And again, as Sarah mentioned, I'll do my best to answer questions throughout the webinar, so feel free to pop anything over in the Q&A box. Otherwise, I'll stick around towards the end to do a Q&A session with any leftover questions. I'm expecting today's webinar to go probably about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll leave the remaining time for the Q&A. Awesome. So as I mentioned, very busy year for us. We've done a lot of international work, and to support that, we had to. The first big thing we launched this year was around adding extra global data centers. So we now have a couple in the U.S. We've added one in the UK, one over in Europe, and one in Australia. So definitely supporting our international expansion. And supporting and giving us the ability to get into countries that have data residency laws or restrictions and such, and also to make sure that our product performs as best as possible within those regions. And we're constantly reevaluating to see what's next and see where else makes sense. On the actual feature side of things, the APIs has been one of our key focuses that I shared in the last webinar. And I'm really happy and proud to announce that we've launched our first major set of APIs, really focusing around supporting integrations that along the lines of documentation and PSA integrations. So with that, we announced two different sets of APIs, giving you access to all the inventory available within Auvik. So all the details about every asset and network and interface that we do see. And also giving you access into the alert history. So what alerts did we fire and all the information about them. And that has obviously powered some really key integrations within our ecosystem, those of the likes of Passportal and BrightGauge and IT Blue and Warranty Master. I think we've seen tremendous success throughout those already. So there's lots of exciting changes and lots of exciting new integrations there. And on the device support side, this is constantly a mission of ours to expand our reach and our depth and breadth on devices. So in the last quarter or so, we've added significant amount of extra support for Palo Alto devices, some additional information on SonicWall devices, and adding support for Dell AeroHive. And last but not least, in terms of what's on this slide, is those of you that have enabled the login with Microsoft feature. One of the usability enhancements that we wanted to add is just simplifying the process of remote terminal work. So those of you not familiar with Auvik, we give you the ability to launch a remote terminal session into a device. So if you're not on the same network, you can easily get access to SSH or otherwise. And we want to make sure that we do that in the most secure way possible. So we do ask you to re-authenticate just to make sure that you haven't left your Auvik screen open and you want to get into a device. So we've enhanced the experience with login with Microsoft just to be quite a bit simpler, so not have to go through a full re-authentication process. The next major announcement that we did around the last little while was you may have seen a press release announcing this, but we've done quite a bit of work with Cisco, and we've been working with them very closely on an integration to give you a lot more visibility into their devices. I believe it was late last year we launched a network diversity report, and within that report we saw kind of the breakdown of how prolific certain devices and makes and models were in different categories. Not necessarily shocking, but Cisco is at the top of several of those lists. So we wanted to give you access to even more information around the Cisco information. So we will be actually doing a dedicated webinar with Cisco in about 2 weeks in mid-May. That'll do a bit more of a deep dive into this integration. But the integration really focuses, at least right now, on two major components. First is understanding the warranty and service coverage status of a device. So understanding whether a device has an active service contract and whether or not a device has an active warranty on it. And this is specifically to give you a lot more visibility into this information, rather than having to go onto Cisco's website, enter in the information, go back in and try to understand and go through that for each different device. So this is definitely something that's going to provide a lot of value, and I think specifically around network assessments and onboarding of new clients. We've done a lot of work in the last while to give you even more and more information to help you onboard customers and help you do more thorough network assessments. This has definitely been one of the things we've heard a lot of requests around, because it is one of the last very manual tasks. So within our UI, on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see what we've added to the device information section. So you'll see some extra information there, and at the top right, you'll see the warranty status report that we give you access to that shows you that information. Now, in addition to the warranty and service coverage status, we're also bringing in what Cisco deems as recommended software. So the recommended software, this is up to Cisco to publish on a regular basis. But what we do is we'll take a look and ask Cisco, based off of this make, model, and the other information we have about a device, what version of firmware or software would you actually recommend being Cisco? So that gives you access to understanding how out of date the device is in relation to Cisco's recommendations. So lots of great visibility there, and you can see the report on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Now, this does only work with Cisco at this point. This is kind of our first kick at going through and grabbing more information around recommended versions and such. We absolutely want to do this with other vendors, though this does only work with Cisco at this point. And a lot of vendors, unfortunately, don't expose this level of information programmatically, at least, or expose it to software vendors. So we're going to continue to see who else out there has this type of information and absolutely see what we can do to integrate it. Another thing that I talked about last year was around the ConnectWise Manage integration. So ConnectWise has, ConnectWise Manage rather, in the last couple of years has done a great job at redoing the way that people can integrate into them. From a technical jargon perspective, this is moving from a SOAP API to a REST API. So they've just basically redone the way that these integrations can access their product and work with their product. So this is less of a feature thing, more of a making sure that we are on the latest and greatest type of integration with ConnectWise Manage. But it also gives us access to a ton more information that we'll be able to use to deepen our integration in the future. Those of you that have Auvik today and have deployed the ConnectWise Manage integration, please do make sure you go ahead and migrate to this new integration as soon as possible. We do have a deadline of September 7th, 2009, and we'll go ahead and post a link to the KB article in the chat here as well. Do have quite a few months left, but it's definitely something you definitely want to go work through as soon as possible. And we've tried to make this migration as easy and transparent as possible. So it goes through several different steps and also has a nice test stage towards the end. And last but not least, in terms of what we've launched lately, this is not a small one. And we, as we announced on the last webinar, we've acquired a company called Talaya. And in the last couple of months, we've done a tremendous amount of work to integrate this into our core product. So I'm very, very, very excited to announce the launching of Auvik TrafficInsights. This is a fantastic product that gives you a lot of visibility into what traffic is actually going through a network and how that network is actually being used. So from our perspective, this was a very, very, very busy beta. I think we had approximately 250 partners on the beta. I think we had about 300 or so devices that were onboarded as a part of the beta. And this was, and so we did a bit of a soft launch of this about 4 weeks ago. I think we're already up to about 1,700 devices, so some tremendous growth, lots of interest in this beta. And from my perspective, this has been a really, really successful launch and successful product. And I gauge that from obviously the adoption numbers, but the thing that I find really, really exciting is I'll talk you through some of the different use cases and what this product does and how it can benefit you. But what was really, really exciting for me personally is seeing people use this product and its feature in ways you'd almost never expect, which is really, really exciting. So in terms of kind of the main types of use cases, it provides you a lot of great insights into troubleshooting. So obviously kind of touching the main case of why is my internet slow, what's actually happening, and we'll dive into that one quite a bit in a minute. But lots of interesting use cases, particularly around security and compliance and capacity planning. So specifically along the security and compliance one, we heard some great stories around partners troubleshooting and dealing with servers or devices that got infected with malware. And TrafficInsights gives you quite a bit of visibility into what that device actually did during that time it was infected. So unfortunately nowadays, malware has gotten very, very sophisticated and can lie dormant until it's woken up, or whether that is triggered by a time or otherwise. So understanding what a device actually does while it is in an infected state is really, really critical to understanding, preventing rather other devices from being infected. So we saw one partner that did exactly that. Fairly critical server was actually infected. And then they used TrafficInsights to understand what it did during that time, and saw that it had actually spread locally to several other devices, though nothing else actually caught those other devices being infected because they hadn't done anything malicious yet or anything suspicious yet. It was in a dormant state, but they were able to go out and detect that. Lots of other great situations around security and compliance, around banned applications. I think most companies nowadays are looking at the traffic that's flowing through the network and what you should be doing at work versus not. So understanding whether people are using things like BitTorrent or otherwise. We also had some partners that are using it for identifying content sharing applications. So things like Dropbox or otherwise. Now that's kind of that's almost in both categories of, if it's an approved application and you're selling Dropbox, they should absolutely be using it. And you can use TrafficInsights to actually understand who is using it and how much. Or if it's an application you have not specifically approved, you can absolutely look at that as well. And another really interesting case that came up was around DNS. And I've found this one particularly interesting, and I'll do a bit of a demo of this shortly. A lot of partners are using DNS protection services. There's quite a few of them out there that actually kind of offer a first line of defense against malware attacks. So preventing you from resolving domains that are known bad. Now, one of the tricky parts about that is there are ways to avoid it or bypass it. And those are typically a sign of infection or someone trying to bypass security policies. So one of our partners actually used Traffic Insights during the beta to actually look at all the DNS traffic that was flowing through their network and looked at the destination of that DNS traffic. And they were able to identify devices that were not configured to use their protection service, and devices that were going off to third-party DNS servers. So there's definitely some really, really valuable insights that can provide you there. And then whether that is a sign of infection or that is just a device that was not onboarded properly, or didn't take the settings for some reason, or someone trying to bypass policies, we can give you a lot more visibility into that traffic and understanding where it's going there as well. And last but not least, another really interesting story that came up was around capacity planning. So the first thing that jumps to mind when you're looking at understanding what traffic is flowing through the network, you immediately jump to troubleshooting and jump to understanding why is my internet going so slow, and understanding who's using what. Whether they're streaming something off of YouTube that's using up a lot of the bandwidth or not. But one partner actually used it in the exact kind of opposite scenario, where their customer had a very, very saturated link and had been constantly trying to educate them around the benefits of upgrading to a better link. And they actually used Traffic Insights kind of in the inverse way of troubleshooting, and it was to actually show that all the traffic that was flowing through this network was actually legitimately all relevant business value traffic. So it was all people doing their normal work, and this was just expected traffic. And once they're able to show that breakdown to their end customer, it was a fairly easy case to actually to sell them on. Look, you need to get a better internet connection. You're maximizing with the value and the bandwidth you have available to you. There's not much opportunity to trim this down by enforcing other policies. So as long as you have a better pipe available, definitely would suggest upgrading. So one of our partners did exactly that during the beta as well. So lots of great exciting stories that we can talk through, and I don't want to spend too much time on just the story element of this, and I want to actually show you the product in a minute. But if you were on the beta or you've started using it since then and have an interesting story, I'd love to hear from you. As Sarah mentioned earlier, my contact information is at the end of this webinar, and love to hear anything you'd have to say. So kind of getting more into what is Traffic Insights, less from a use case perspective, kind of what it actually is. It's a NetFlow solution, as I mentioned before. Unlike a lot of traditional NetFlow solutions, it is incredibly easy to set up. There is the effort of going on to the device itself and saying, please send my NetFlow traffic to this address. But once outside of that, there's no additional on-premise infrastructure in terms of a high-end server that is collecting, storing, and building reports of this data. There's no additional software you need to install actually whatsoever. It uses our existing collector, and it also relays this traffic back to the cloud securely, which is really, really critical for MSPs. If you're sending this type of data over the internet, you want to make sure that it's done right and done securely. So absolutely uses our collector for that reason. So once the device is set up, the product itself is a dashboard-driven product. Lots of drill downs, click throughs, which we'll see in a moment in a live environment. But very, 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 very simple to use. And one of the things that I particularly love about getting this much data, just as a fairly technical person, I love going through the data and using some of the more advanced filtering to actually narrow it down to specific use cases. This was a good example of someone using advanced filtering to identify DNS traffic. As you can see on the screen here, there's ultimately kind of two main ways of filtering data. Both as one is a timeline that you can see along the top here, but you can also see on the bottom right all of the different things that we can actually apply filters to, whether that is ports or amounts of traffic, or interfaces or protocols, etc. But also things like country, which is really, really neat. So it will also give you a, in addition to giving you the ability to filter on it, we also do give you a nice roll-up view of the geolocation of where all the traffic in the network is flowing to and from via different toggles. So you can easily at a glance kind of see where in the world most of the traffic is going through. And whether that is from a security perspective or also just from a optimization perspective, this gives you quite a bit of insights into that. And I think there's a lot of really, really interesting stories that that this one here particularly provides. I think we can talk through a couple different use cases, but especially some of the stories we've heard from our partners. Again, there's some that are more malicious, and a lot that are not. But giving this visibility is really, really key, and it's something that a lot of end customers, MSPs, have not had. So really exciting stuff from our perspective. I'd like to share one story that this is a personal story, but it's one of the ones that's kind of stuck with me over the last little while, and something we use Traffic Insights to actually identify. And again, this is a personal story, but a friend of mine had actually bought a ton of new IoT-based light bulbs, and I think this is, I think there's a lot of interesting stories about these devices, and it's particularly because of the caliber of devices that you can buy nowadays. If you want to buy a proper high-end device, you can go out and buy some of the Philips or other brands, but through various sources, you can get incredibly cheap IoT-based light bulbs. Like I personally, bought ones around the $20 range, Canadian that is, but you can get them absolutely significantly cheaper. Anyway, it's just a bit of a quick story as an aside here, but a friend of mine did actually go off and buy a fair amount of these light bulbs just to deploy through his house. Again, this is not a MSP or company type story, but it absolutely relates to it. And he noticed that a lot of his network was saturated, and he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't streaming Netflix, wasn't streaming any videos, and he found that his internet connection was significantly slower after adding these bulbs. Him being a network guy, the first thing he thought of, well, maybe it's trying to do updates and that type of thing, so I'll give it some time. But after he thought about it, it's probably not a large update for a light bulb. So he had asked to actually deploy this technology on site just to see where that information is going to. Of course, being a network guy has a higher end device, which is kind of how this relates back to your customers and the MSP story. But it was a really, really interesting and scary story. But because the light bulbs were actually transmitting a decent amount of traffic to another country that he would not have expected. And upon further investigation, he actually found microphones that were in some of the light bulbs. Now, again, this is a pretty extreme story, pretty scary story. Unfortunately, very true and a very personal story. But I did want to share that because it is an interesting, getting visibility into where traffic is going geographically and the amount. It absolutely helps you narrow this down and understand what is happening in that environment and whether or not it is to be expected. Another story that one of our partners shared with us during the last couple of months was he did exactly this, took a look, deployed this, and saw a reasonable amount of traffic going out into China, and didn't believe they had any business dealings in China. So he went out and investigated. In this case here, the exact opposite of my previous story, there was nothing malicious going on. It was just a worker that was communicating with some friends back home. But the end customer is really, really impressed that they're able to see that type of information and be proactive in reaching out. And that just furthered that relationship. So there's obviously stories that range from very scary security stories to trust and relationship building, but lots of great information that you can extrapolate from that. And last but not least, on the feature perspective, Traffic Insights also gives you access into the very, very raw records of what we actually see flowing through a network. So I'll just jump into the product here to give you a bit of a live view. But this raw records view is really, really powerful in giving you the visibility into specifically what happened, where it went, and what devices were involved. So as I mentioned, the first thing once you go into the Auvik dashboard is you'll notice a Traffic Insights menu on the left-hand side. The Traffic Insights menu will give you access to two different sections. The first around the setup of it and the summary, and then the launching of the feature itself. So once you click on Traffic Insights on a particular customer, you will see all the different devices that we have seen NetFlow style traffic from, and you will see whether or not it is approved. And as I mentioned, the setup of it is incredibly simple, though we do want to have an extra step just to make sure this is something that you do want to set up. So if you jump into a specific device, you'll also see the Traffic Insights drop down along the top. And if you go into the setup pane, you will see the three different steps that are involved in setting up Traffic Insights. The first is the flow must be enabled for the device. That those devices do need to send us information. Flow must be approved. Simple, just approve button. And then we will push out this information out into the Traffic Insights. Just those of you that are a little more technical, one of the questions that's already come up is around sampling. So we do support sampling. You can configure it right here, and I think Sarah can actually go ahead and post a couple of knowledge-based articles just for some additional reading on what sampling is, what we recommend, and otherwise. So then jumping into the product itself, if you want to, you can either do that from the device itself under the launch dashboard section or under the left-hand pane and click in launch dashboard. And that will bring you into the Traffic Insights view. The first view you can kind of see here is just a really high level overview of all the different types of traffic we saw. And over a specific time period. You'll have access to the different grids that allow you to drill down or click through, or if you want to actually do some filtering, you can do that along the bottom here as well. And as I mentioned earlier, the ability to filter this data is absolutely critical to really narrowing information down. So if you go to the Add Filter section along the top, this is the ability to create your own filters. We give you some examples along the top here as well. So some examples, some of the keywords that are available. And if you do want to do based off country, we'll give you kind of the country listing here as well. So as an example, if I want to see all traffic going to Russia, I can click on that and hit apply. And you'll see that all the different views in the product have now refreshed to be specific to the search criteria that I've specified. So you'll see specifically going to Russia, I'm seeing not a significant amount of traffic, but it's about 10 kilobytes per second. So not a tremendous amount, but non-zero. And if I want to actually break this down even more, I can go into this view here and see specifically which cities and locations are causing the different amounts of traffic. And you can also do a bit of a breakdown up here as well. So this is one of the views. As I mentioned, the other great powerful view is jumping into the flows view along the left-hand side, and this will give you access to the raw records that are available and the information that's available for the search query. So you'll see what device reached out to which destination address. And the search, as I mentioned, very, very powerful. So this particular example was filtering based off of Russia. You could just as easily go through and specify DNS ports if you want to support the case that we mentioned earlier, or otherwise, and does have the ability to do grouping and other operators. So that was just a bit of a quick live demo I wanted to jump into for the Traffic Insights launch. Again, very, very, very exciting time from our perspective. Lots of great things that are being rolled out along with that product. And lots of great stories. So if you have any, as I mentioned earlier, feel free to share them. If you have any questions, again, it looks like there's quite a few questions coming in, so I'll stick around towards the end and answer as many as possible. So that covers off kind of the beginning of the year. And that has been, as I mentioned, very, very exciting, very, very busy beginning of the year. What I want to go over next is kind of the rollout. And the definition of this is what is very, very close to beta? What are we launching in the next couple of months that we want to give you some insight into? So we'll go into a couple of those fairly deeply. Now there are quite a few other much longer projects that we don't anticipate going into beta in the next couple of months. I won't be covering those in detail at this point. Sarah mentioned we want to get into the cadence of doing a couple of these a year, or at least 2 a year. So as those other projects do get a little bit closer, we'll share even more information about them. So in terms of what's coming soon, so in terms of the core product, device support, as I mentioned earlier, an investment that we are not slowing down on. We're continuing to invest in this, making sure that we are supporting the right devices in the right ways that our partners are asking for us. So a couple launches that are going to be coming up in terms of device support is we'll be adding support for data networking devices. So that's a fairly common request on our side. And also quite a bit of improved ubiquity support, specifically around the Unify and Edge Max series. That there is actually one of the most common devices that we've received feature requests for. I believe it's actually our second feature request out of all of the different feature requests. So very, very common request there. So we'll be adding that support in the very short term. Continuing down some of the Cisco stuff that we talked about earlier. Cisco has another API that has been made available to us that is called End of X, where X is sale, support, life, etc. And this gives partners a lot of visibility into kind of the state of the end of life process a device is in. So understanding whether sales have stopped on a particular device gives you some insights into, well, I'm not going to be able to buy this device brand new anymore. So I'd have to make sure that I have some sources available where I can get this used, or maybe I start the conversation. This is a cue to start the conversation around replacing the device. End of support, obviously, if you want to get tech support on a device, you'll have to do it so before the end of support date. And then there's a couple other ones specifically around the software side of things, whether or not a device is end of software maintenance patches. So if bugs are found after a particular date, those bugs will not be found unless they're security related. And then there is also another hard date on when they'll stop publishing security patches as well. So again, lots of dates, lots of really important information. So we'll be starting to work on that soon and launching that soon. And then once again, I think Cisco has all of this data readily available for integrators such as ourselves. And we're going to continue to look at who else out there has this type of information now that we've done it once. Along the API front, we'll be launching another round of APIs. This one here will be more around billing usage. This has been a fairly requested API, so you can get more automation around getting details as to what is a billable device in our product or not. And another really important one is around topology discovery, or effectively mapping or wiring, or different terms used here. We launched our map quite a few years ago, and has been very, very widely successful. But we've definitely seen some cases where it isn't 100% accurate because of the information we're getting from devices is incomplete or otherwise. Because we're not dealing with $20,000 Cisco devices or high-end devices in all cases. So there's some situations where we wanted to actually take this and apply some more machine learning to how we can actually do this discovery a little better in situations where we have even less information than today. So we'll be soon, in the next month or two, launching a beta for a second generation discovery algorithm. Again, this is purely a behind the scenes mapping algorithm. But again, in the situations where we have even less data than we need, we want to be able to offer as accurate maps as possible. So definitely be launching a beta for that soon. Along the discussion around mapping and such, Hyper-V has definitely been a fairly commonly requested feature. So adding support for Hyper-V mapping specifically. So the ability, we introduced the ability about a year and a bit ago around VMware, very, very successful. But coming from the MSP space, I know how prolific Hyper-V is in the space. So we wanted to add support in this relatively similar fashion for Hyper-V. Though we are going less deep in the monitoring of specific Hyper-V elements, because we know most of the RMMs already do that. So we don't want to create any extra overlap in that regard. But in terms of making sure the map is accurate, understanding what guests are running on Hyper-V is really, really, really critical. So we've done an integration with Hyper-V that allows us to pull that information. So both from a map accuracy perspective, or if someone is troubleshooting a particular device on a network, this gives you the ability to quickly understand what's the relationship, whether that is a host, so whether that is a guest on a particular host, and kind of what's the chain out to the rest of the network. So giving you visibility into that. And along with that, we've also had to pull in some information about the virtual machines. Again, this will just give you more information along the inventory and asset front. And this will just help help automate even more if you're using the product also to do network assessments. Again, the more we can automate for you, I think the better the output that you can produce to the end customer, or with even less effort. So Hyper-V, very, very, very common feature request. It's actually our #1 feature request. So I'm particularly excited with the next couple of months, because we'll be launching our #1 and #2 feature requests. But very common request. So we're hoping to launch this probably within the next month or so.
Hey, Pat,
Yeah.
I have a quick question for you here. I know you guys get a ton of feature requests on the product management team side. So is this one of the most common ones? And like, how many feature requests are you handling on a weekly or monthly basis?
Yeah, great question. And I think this is an interesting topic around feature requests. Because towards the end of the presentation, I'll give you my email address if you want to submit feature requests directly to me. And right now, the best way to submit a feature request is actually directly through our support team. There's the ability to log a feature request that way. And in the back end, we actually are using a product for kind of grouping and assembling all these feature requests together. So when you do launch a feature request through the support team today, they will go ahead and find the associated feature request in our system and add a vote onto it. So all these things are quite a bit of automation and kind of assembling of all this information. Not yet available to the general public yet. Like we're working through making sure that we can give logins and provide all the authentication mechanisms with that and all of the rest of our products together. So it's not something we're providing externally today, but do know if you do submit a feature request via support, it does end up in our feature request tracking system associated with votes. And as I mentioned, this is actually our #1 feature request. I forget the exact amount on it, but it is a pretty significant amount. As we're starting to grow as a company, obviously we're getting more and more feature requests. So assembling this all into one place is really key. But this was definitely one of our biggest feature requests. There was several dozens, or if not more, partners that have asked for this particular feature. Now we just launched Traffic Insights again a couple weeks ago. We've already planned kind of the next phase of major improvements that we want to do to Traffic Insights. So we'll be investing quite a bit in the short term of adding a couple of extra things. The first main thing is around S-Flow support. So I mentioned the term NetFlow earlier a couple of times, which is a protocol, or kind of a group, almost like a group of protocols for devices passing information about the traffic going through them. S-Flow is yet another standard in the flow-based protocol space. So we already support quite a few of those protocols today. S-Flow is one of the ones that we do not yet support, and it is fairly common within the MSP space. So we are looking at adding the S-Flow support in the next couple months. And throughout the beta and post-launch, we've also identified quite a few opportunities to even further improve our application detection that I showed you earlier. So we're going to be we're working on quite a bit of improvements around the algorithms themselves. So to make sure that the traffic is automatically classified the best we possibly can. But if you are using a specific line of business or custom application within an environment, we're gonna be giving you the ability to add your own custom applications as well. So you can tell us what that looks and feels like and where we should be applying that, so that information does get accurately displayed in all of the Traffic Insights dashboards and such. So that'll be coming soon as well. And last but not least, on the Traffic Insights side, continuing the integration with the Auvik network management system is bringing more context and more device information into the Traffic Insights based views. So if you took a look at some of them earlier, mostly in a lot of, especially when it relates to the internal network, you're going to see a lot of IP addresses in the in terms of the outputs and the raw views. Now, Auvik, the network management side, we have a lot of context and got a great information about these devices. So we're looking at joining some more of that data to kind of further enhance what the traditional NetFlow solution gives. So you'll see information about the device, so particularly the name and otherwise in the Traffic Insights based views. Again, kind of going above and beyond the traditional what NetFlow covers. And kind of the last but not least major thing I wanted to talk through was around MSP level views. So I talked about this a little bit at our last webinar, roadmap webinar, as something we started working on. It is a fairly large endeavor from our perspective, just because of how secure we made the data. So we are hoping to go to beta in the next month or so with some MSP level views, particularly around two main categories. And you'll see these interactions and experiences getting better and better throughout the beta. But the two main categories are around inventory and alert views. So on the inventory side, the main purpose of this is really surfacing as much information as possible at the MSP level around all the different devices that we have visibility into. So if there's things like, you know, a vendor releasing a product vulnerability announcement like just happened this morning, you know, it's easy to go in and quickly understand what devices you have that could potentially meet that vulnerability. Or it's other things like capacity planning and understanding, you know, what types of devices do you have in your environment that you know are going to be end of life soon, and you should start having conversations around upgrades or replacements for. And then also on the alert side of things, giving you visibility into the alerts that have triggered across all the different customers that you do have. So, you know, effectively you can look at them and you know, either better understand which ones should be tweaked based off different scenarios, or if you're starting to see a trend across multiple customers and with similar situations, giving you access to more and more information at that particular level. And also from a kind of a technician perspective, going in and seeing one global list of all of the different alerts that have triggered recently definitely improves that workflow considerably. So that's something we've been working very, very hard on over the last 6+ months. So we'll be launching that into beta in the next month or so. And again, we'll be launching that in, you know, as iterative as possible. So we want to improve this experience over time before we do a full general release. So again, largely speaking, those were kind of the major projects that we do have going on right now that are coming to a close pretty soon. So I wanted to do just a roadmap update with everyone to, you know, let you know what is coming in the next couple months. And as I mentioned, there are some longer term projects that we do have on the go that we'll get into probably a lot more detail in our next roadmap update. But there's some very, very exciting projects that we're working on that we'll have more information on then, particularly around logging and otherwise. So look forward to some more information in our next update. And I will jump into Q&A in just a moment. But as I mentioned a couple of times throughout the webinar, if you do have any feedback that you wanted to share, here is my contact information, and I can make sure to get you in touch with the appropriate product manager. Or feel free to log a feature request via support. And if you joined the webinar, seeing something that's really, really interesting, whether that's a new integration or new feature, and you want to take a look at Auvik, feel free to head to auvik.com/rm19 to go ahead and book a demo and get a $5 Starbucks gift card. So that being said, I think we have a significant amount of questions to go through. So I'll just go ahead and start reviewing those shortly. If you do need to head off now, thank you very, very much for joining. And as Sarah mentioned, this webinar has been recorded and will be posted up on auvik.com/franklymsp. So if you need to refer back to anything, you can easily do that. And otherwise, I appreciate you joining. And those of you who want to stick around for the Q&A, I'll be around for the next 15 minutes or so answering some questions. Thank you, everyone. So just give me one moment just to start going through some of these questions. Lots of questions around how to join upcoming betas. This has been quite a few questions around that. And I think Sarah's reached out to some of you directly to answer this. You can either email me directly or reach out to your partner success manager, and I can put you in. So either one of us can put you in touch with the appropriate person on our side to get you involved in the beta. So we have a very much growing product management team here. So we're starting to spread the different betas out amongst different people. So either myself or your partner success manager is the right starting point. Question around, I guess I'll start just going through some of these ones one by one. A question around disk utilization on servers, whether or not we are able to pull that information. Though this is traditionally more RMM focused, more RMM focused activity, we do absolutely bring some of that information in. So I think that question was already answered, but that's that. With the IT glue integration, looks like actually quite a few questions around the IT glue integration. I think I'll take some of these offline. This is an IT glue built integration, so they're the ones that have actually built the integration themselves using their APIs. So some of it will be on our end, some of it will be on their end. So we can follow up with the IT glue specific questions and comments afterwards, just to see which place to best direct you to. Question around the Cisco information and whether that supports only devices in the US. No, so the Cisco integration that we launched actually it covers Cisco in general. I believe there certainly are some exceptions on the Cisco side, whether or not the APIs are supported on their side or not. Some information around the SMB gear, so particularly the SG series, does not have all the information, and I think there's a couple of other models and lines that are not fully supported. But in terms of geographic coverage, there should be no difference there. All right, sorry, just reading through some more of the comments. Questions. I've already answered quite a few of those there.
Sorry, Pat, I just want to jump in. There's a conversation going on in the chat right now about justifying the cost of Auvik, and I just wanted to share that if anyone is having these feelings, then if you want to visit auvik.com/grow, we actually have an entire suite of resources around having conversations with prospects and existing clients about the benefit of proactive network management. And these resources can also help you make money using Auvik. So it's really, it's a ton of great information about how to monetize your network management activities. So especially speaking to Todd here, I hear you. And if you want to check that out, I think that might help with what you're talking about in the chat room right now.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sarah. I've been focusing mostly on the Q&A. Didn't see the hundreds or so messages in the chat group.
It's lively today. It's exciting. Everyone has a lot to say. It's been fantastic so far.
That is really exciting. All right, so I think outside of that, I think I've covered most of the questions that we did have come in. There are some other very, very specific ones that I think I can easily follow up over email on. I'm just doing a quick run through of them right now. So if I did get a chance to answer your question on the line right now, I'll get a chance to reach out directly over email afterwards as well. I think I've answered the majority of them here. Actually, one question. So someone had around, do we have any integrations with any upcoming integrations with any SIEMs? So any security logging tools? So we don't yet at this point, though a lot of the information that we do have could be pulled from our APIs. If you are interested, so I think this may be a bit more of a general statement, but if there are any integrations that you'd love to see us do, or specifically whether it's a category or a specific company, I'd love to hear your feedback. And if there's any specific vendors you'd want us to reach out to and have a conversation with, would love to hear that specific feedback. So feel free to just reach out to me directly over email with any suggestions of other types of integrations that you'd like to see, whether that's something that we build or that's something that we make available in terms of the information and contact them to consume it. So lots of good questions around that.
Pat, just
Yep.
one more thing.
Yep.
I'm not sure if this is something that you can shine a light on, but there are also some questions in the chat room about how to scale pricing for Auvik, that the pricing makes sense on smaller client sites, but once you get to bigger client sites with more network devices, the pricing doesn't scale super well. So I'm not sure, do you have any insider feedback there on that?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely worth a good conversation offline as to how that works. So the pricing our pricing today is focused on, how many devices does an entire MSP support, and that's largely how our pricing is scaled and focused today. But I think this really comes back down to the larger the environment. I think that should also, your pricing to your customer should also scale accordingly, based off either the complexity or the type of work. So I think it's a fairly similar conversation that you alluded to earlier, Sarah, around having to grow that. Because I think from our perspective, our pricing it scales as the MSP grows. But if you do have particularly large customers, the services you provide to them should also scale in accordance. So I think we can take that one offline.
Okay, that's great. Todd, I'm going to make sure that we reach out to you about your concerns after the fact. I think that's all the additional questions that I saw in the chat room, Pat.
Yeah, I think I've pretty much covered all the other ones. Again, there are a couple of specific questions around how this integration could work and otherwise. So I can go ahead and reach out to those individuals directly, just to talk through those use cases a little bit more. So if you haven't answered your question on the line, we'll definitely do so. And one question actually did come up just around TrafficInsights. So around the pricing of that particular feature. So this is something that we are working quite a bit on right now. We'll probably have more information on that in the coming week or two. We wanted to make sure that we really understood how our partners wanted it priced in terms of the dynamic of how they were going to either sell it to their customers as a service or include it within their services. So we did quite a bit of homework along that front, and obviously wanted to understand how that scales out with their customer base as well. So definitely look forward to more information in the next week or two along that front.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. And thank you everyone for joining and sticking around for 54 minutes on a Thursday. We appreciate you joining, and the recording will be available within a day or two, certainly by Monday at the latest, in case you want to recap on anything that Pat discussed today. Awesome. Well, thanks to everyone for taking the time of your day. And as mentioned, feel free to absolutely reach out to me directly if you have any further questions, comments that you want to discuss offline. We can absolutely do that. And otherwise, I'll look forward to our chat in the next couple months.